Well, I'm Oran Young, and I've worked for many years on issues of governance in general, and some of my applied work deals with ocean governance. And there's a sense in the community that we're facing more and more problems of governance in the ocean, which may even be moving toward a crisis. And so I was interested in trying to understand the nature of the problem and the different approaches to solving the problem that are being discussed within the community, and whether or not these approaches are likely to be effective, whether the problem that people are concerned with will be addressed effectively by these different strategies or proposals for governance systems. Well, geopolitics means many things to many people. It certainly has something to do with spatial relations and the extent to which solutions to various problems can be defined in spatial terms. In some cases, this is certainly very relevant to the oceans, because we have coastal states expanding their jurisdiction and increasing their authority to make decisions, to introduce new policies and so on. On the other hand, some of the issues are global. For example, climate change, which is driven by global forces and which has huge consequences for the oceans, which is not specifically spatial in nature. So geopolitics, yes, but I think we need not to be straitjacketed by some limited conception of geopolitics. In thinking about the future of the oceans, I see three main types of problems. One of these problems has to do with overharvesting of marine living resources. This is a classic collective action problem where the outcomes of everybody's individual behavior lead to collectively undesirable results. Another kind of problem has to do with marine pollution, which is, for the most part, a matter of the unintended side effects of people who are pursuing other kinds of activities, like, for example, dead zones resulting from the runoff of fertilizer or chemical pesticides. Then there's this overarching third set of problems which are global in character and have to do with climate change. Climate change, which is not specifically an ocean issue, but where changes in the climate system have very significant consequences for the ocean, whether this is sea level rise or one that I think is likely to be particularly important, the increasing acidification of the oceans. When we think about addressing these problems that I've mentioned, we need to understand their sources. And in almost every case, the sources of these problems can be traced to human action, whether it's human harvesting of living resources, whether it's pollution, whether it's climate change. So human behavior on a very large scale has become a significant part of the problems. So if we want to solve these problems, we need to find ways to guide or to steer the behavior of the human beings. It's not enough just to have better knowledge of the biology or better knowledge of the physical nature of the oceans. Yes, that's very important, but if the problems are related in a fundamental sense to the actions of humans, we must find ways to influence or steer that human action. And that's the nature of social science. And so there's no way to avoid bringing in the social sciences and hopefully joining forces between the social sciences and the natural sciences as we find ways to address these issues. Well, if you think about the take-home message from what I've been saying, it's several things. One is that we have, as I put it, a sea of problems. So it's not just one big crisis, but a set of problems which are somewhat different in character. And we need to understand the nature of each of these problems. And then we need to think about the human institutions, the human management, governance practices that can be developed to address the particular problems, while bearing in mind that there are larger questions like the climate change question, which are not problems of the use of marine resources, but which will have profound consequences for marine systems. So multiple problems, human responses, keeping the big picture in mind. Well, I do think conferences of this nature are important, especially when they bring together people from quite a wide range of different backgrounds to engage in a kind of community building process. With all due respect to the wonders of modern technology, human face-to-face interaction is still very important in terms of community building and creating an intentional community of people who are really committed to thinking in the long term about these issues and bringing their different expertise to bear in this kind of interdisciplinary setting. So I think that's a very important function for events of this kind. Well, I do think that the notion of open science is a very important one, and we've had, I think, in the past a tendency to have sort of barriers to entry, subscription prices or other difficulties in gaining access. And now that we have modern technology of communications, there's so many opportunities to get word out to people, even in very remote places, who nonetheless can have some kind of an access to the internet and can therefore benefit from thinking on the part of specialists in a far more broad-based way. I do not know the journal MARE very well, but insofar as it's part of this larger transition which I see going on in science communication, I think it's a highly desirable thing, and so I feel that this journal certainly can play a role in the process.